Just type a Y if you can hear me okay. Robert, anyone else? Michelle, excellent. Okay, so welcome everyone to our continual manifestation and awakening your innate manifestation. So, very exciting today. I made it, Warren Mitchell, yes, I know. The joys of manifestation, I had a very profound experience last night, which was unexpected. I don't know if many of you know, but last night was a super blood or some kind of super cool snow moon or something, and it's the moon of the year where the actual moon is closest to the Earth of any other moon. So it's meant to be the most intense energy. So it's a great time to do any kind of meditation or download session or any kind of psychedelic session or anything like that which you are inclined to do. So last night I decided to do a meditation and deep download session, and unexpectedly I had a visitation. And it's funny, you know, when you expect them you tend often not to get them, and when you don't, that's when it happens. And so I had a number of beings turn up, and basically next minute I felt this fear like I haven't felt in years, and it wouldn't leave me. And then they told me, they said, we're removing stuff from your, going right back to when you were age 4. And then they showed me some stuff that happened, which I wasn't even aware about. And they said deep pain, trauma, and what you saw at the time was abusive parenting towards you. And they said, but it left a profound impact on your nervous system. So they said, we're healing you. And I went through a profound healing, and it went for quite a long time. And it was a little bit scary, to be honest with you, because I was having to release a whole lot of dark masters. There was a whole lot of locked up stuff in my nervous system that one by one they were removing from me and healing me. And eventually about midnight, or soon after midnight, it ended, and then I fell asleep. But as you can guess, I was tired and took a while to recover. But very, very profound, unexpected. That's always the best. And that's really, it's a good prelude into today, because week 5 is normally, by now, we're starting to see things really start happening. And I've definitely been getting emails from people saying to that effect. Yeah, it was, Mitch. It was actually incredible. In fact, at the time, I'll be honest, it was actually one of the more scary ones I've ever had. Whereas generally, I wouldn't really describe myself as being frightened when these things happen. But for some reason, I was immensely frightened when it happened. And they just told me, they said, you're dealing with some really deep stuff here. Stuff that's so deep you're not even aware of it. So they said, just allow us to heal you and trust and let go. So they were showing me that I basically, my trust what's called my trust barometer has significantly been damaged through that. And so my trust towards women, my trust towards people generally wasn't particularly high. And although a lot of it had been healed, there was a deep layer that was still playing out in my life, which I wasn't even aware about. So it's profound when this really starts happening, and you really start seeing things change and start moving in your life. So yeah, it really just, this is the time to really just start opening yourself up to these things, because what you'll start finding is that miracles and healings and things coming right in your life just start to happen. And you just really, you know, all I can say is this stuff really, really works. And some of you know that already, but that your ability to change your hologram and ultimately, you know, radically change your life is really, it's just basically here right now. So, yeah, let's just say there's been a profound shift that's taken place. And so today, let's just really get ready just to kind of open ourselves up and open our hearts and open our beings, so we can really start to let go of things and just start to manifest. Because today, that's what we'll be doing. We'll be really teaching you a little bit more about the manifestation process, so you start to actually see how blooming scientific it actually really is, as well as spiritual. And these are really higher laws that just basically you haven't really been taught. And the thing to realize is that I can remember in 1999 when I had a really tough time and severe health issues and major depression. And at the time, mental health wasn't really that well understood. And it's like if you went to a psychologist, you were seen as a bit kind of fucked up in the head, whereas now it'd be seen as a normal, healthy thing to do. So I actually spent 3 years with a top psychotherapist and really helped me and changed my life. And now, of course, that's accepted. And that's my prediction. In the next 10 years, you'll find etheric kind of healings and the sort of and manifestations and what I'm doing here today will become more mainstream in society. That 10 years from now, it'll be like more and more doctors and clinics that do this kind of stuff will be the ones that are seen as basically, it'll be, let's just say it'll be more mainstream and you'll be seen as something weird if you don't. Whereas right now, this is still something that's just opening up the society. So I understand you are at the cutting edge of what I see as changing times, as is more spiritual awareness happening. So this is really the time to realize that you do honestly create your hologram and you create your life on every single level. So make sure you got your water, make sure you got rid of all distractions, make sure recordings, and I said recordings will be available within 48, in fact within 24. And okay, so before we start, just share your experiences. I know I've been getting quite a lot of messages from people. So just saying things happening to them, like opening up. I had a message this morning from a lady who in fact came to the free webinar and who just said the day after she had a experience where she clearly saw one of the dark masters and saw what she'd been doing in her life and she was freed from it. And she said there's this new awareness of her. So her name, this is Susan, her name is, which she said to share. Anna, of course, some of you may know, she manifested 3 new clients last week, like out of the blue, when she really, and just after doing some manifestation stuff. So just share in the text chat, anyone else had anything happen, even small, or just notice, I know Steve Plummer, who he said to me that he's not about, he can't be on live today, but he's going to watch the replay, told me that he actually specifically messaged me yesterday and said that, yeah, he said, nothing specific, but he said, I just have to tell you, he said, everything is coming together in my life at the moment. Like, it's hard to explain. He said, and Steve's a very well-known copywriter, who some of you may know, a very, very successful copywriter, one of the best. And so I was a little bit kind of tickled pink when he signed up for the course, because he's someone I've used in the past and I've engaged him to work and do stuff for me and even helped me with some of my webinars. And Steve just said, yeah, he said his life is absolutely coming together. He said he's getting led to get rid of clients. He's got new ones joining unexpectedly. He said his life's just coming together. And that's actually the best ones. When you're not getting anything spectacular necessarily, but you're just getting little changes here and there happening regularly, that means you really are applying this properly. It means you actually are starting to do this and apply this properly, because now you're starting to see gradual, daily, ongoing change. Max says, I was on the verge of getting sick yesterday, worked with my intention energy and cleared up the old energy, felt fine today. Yeah, it's very effective, isn't it, Max? Very effective, especially with sickness. I find that's where I specifically have learnt to master that in my life. And when things do happen, I generally can see the meaning in it pretty quickly. Like about 2 days ago, I started getting sore on the roof of my mouth for my denture, which means at the moment, I can't eat properly basically for 2 days. And the funny thing is, for a whole week, my higher self was telling me to fast for 3 days, to go on a 2 to 3 day fast, just to integrate everything and connect. And I was resisting it because I liked my food too much. I was enjoying my new diet. And this happening means literally I need just 2 days not to eat, just to basically allow myself to integrate. And it's already getting better. But so you start to even see when apparent sickness comes, it's not actually really sickness, it's just your higher self giving you a bit of a prod. James got a new part-time job, which is great. So basically, yeah, so James got about, that's great, James. I know you're actually specifically looking for one. So well done. So James got a part-time job. Let's see who else. Max, yeah, no, hang on, for some reason it's going. Yep, and Max was on the, yep, that's great. Fiona, I've been having a great week. The farm sale was signed up. The farm sale was signed up. Well done, Fiona. Trading, improving, and health good. Oh, that's wonderful news. Well done. That's when you know it's really happening. That's excellent. So Rochelle, inflow of info on Sunday and knowing I will create a retreat for and healing work will come together. Feeling it is all coming together. That's great, Miss Rochelle. Yeah, that's the other thing I noticed. You start to get a lot more confident and start to just know things are going to work out. And to be honest, that was one of the things that helped me last night when I really was feeling intense fear in my session. I just was remembering that exactly what I was putting out there in my hologram was what would happen. So if I started getting afraid that something bad would happen, then something might well do. So I just basically put out there that this was for my good, for my healing, and that everything was indeed coming together. And sure enough, that's what actually started happening. So Mitch, I followed my intuition on a bunch of choices this one night. A friend who I haven't seen in 6 years walked past me after a gig and happened to be here in Melbourne. He looked at me like he just exited hell and told me how the information I told him was exactly what he needed to hear about reality. He's a scientific, logical guy and told me how the universe was tripping him out. That's excellent. Well done, James. That's awesome. And then we've got Robert. I felt in the last week or so, being more calm and not stressing about things, completely different mindset. Now, that's excellent. That's great, Robert. Yeah, you were a lot more stressed when I spoke to you a week or two ago, so that's great. And yeah, if you're just starting to see that happening, that's pretty much one of the first ways to start to change your manifestations is you start to learn not to let fear drive you. There's a very interesting teaching which I remember learning years ago about fight and flight and how many of us are still living in what's called a fight and flight neuro response from what I call when you got a childhood where basically you're taught to live in panic, fear and rush, which many of us are. So once you start to actually calm down and just be patient, it's amazing how things come together. And I've been noticing even in the last month myself, how just incredible things keep happening for me. And just on a minor scale about details and business and just being revealed new things and just the way it's been happening for me. And even this last 3 days, I really was getting frustrated with Infusionsoft, our CRM. And then I've started meeting people who I've known from my past who are very successful at webinar people and doing the same kind of stuff I'm doing, who've been trying out new softwares, and it's all been a similar software. So it's already been giving me answers in terms of what changes to do. Mitchell, not money-related, massive increase in synchronicities. That's great. Anyone else before we start? Because this is where you really start to actually create the manifestations as to what you desire and what you expect to happen. Nolene, this has been a week of constant reminders to trust and have faith. Not all have been seemingly nice reminders, however. Well, we're the ones who label things nice, Nolene. So we're the ones who label things nice and basically and put what I call these little things upon them. So very interesting. So Mitchell, what is nice? Mitch, might be things your dark side wants you to confront. Well, yes, you're going to enjoy today's manifestation because today we'll be exploring some of what I call the dark sides of manifestation, because just because you learn to manifest doesn't mean that suddenly your life's going to become sugar and candy. It just means that you learn, that you start creating your life to go in the direction that you're really desiring to go in, rather than living like most people do, which is what's called by random occurrences, by random scattered ways of thinking. Because the truth is, most people are living by what I call a random scattered way of thinking. In some areas of your life, you're very organized, but other areas, very random and scattered. So, for example, people who have financial challenges, generally you'll find have a very random scattered way of thinking without any clear, structured, guided manifestation happening. People who've got health problems, the same kind of deal. People who've got relationship problems, same kind of deal. So, whereas when you start to create a constant flow of thoughts and intentions as to what you're desiring, then what happens also is you need to start dealing with the stuff that's in the way. So that's what we're going to be covering today. So what we'll do now is let's just start to go over and remind us where we've been so far. So as you know, we've been looking a lot at the science and introductory manifestation, and we've been looking at the basics. And of course, last week, which is probably the one which most people is where the aha moments start happening, was the turning the water into wine. which I had Steve Plummer and a couple of others specifically messaged saying how profound that was. That's probably usually the one more than anything else. Last course we did, this was when a lady got her back instantly healed after the week 4 one. After the week 4 one was when another lady basically when actually this same lady had a debt removed. Another guy just had things work out in his work. So that's when things start happening. Who really found last week's open up some things for them out of interest? And you became a lot clearer. Yeah, Max for sure. Yeah, Max, I remember you said something to me as well. Max for sure, definitely to see you and Mitch. Anyone else? James clarified a lot. Robert? Yeah, because we're water into wine, in all honesty, this is probably one of the best teachings that I found helped me just to really grasp the manifestation process, especially what I call the patience part. This is where most people, from my experience, fall down, is in the patience side. The fact that sometimes manifestation happens quickly, sometimes it actually takes time, because your higher self knows that for you to have this, you actually need to go through a few things to deal with a few things. Like, for example, I've created a manifestation to go to like 10x my income in my business. Like 10x it literally, doing what Grant Cardone talks about 10x, which means 1,000% increase. Now, I'm sure by now you'd be guessing that my life's been challenging since I've made that manifestation. And if you have, you got a gold star and go to the top of the class, because it has been. I'm getting dealt with on deeper levels of detail I never thought were possible in my personal life. I'm being challenged in areas of my business which need to be absolutely fine-tuned, and being challenged in areas of detail in our company and getting our organization and the systems. Mitch, I can feel it in your energy, man. You seem like you're really pushed. Yeah, absolutely. I'm loving it, Mitch. I mean, being pushed is exactly what you need to move to that next level. And in all honesty, that's how you grow. And any of you who've ever been successful in athletics or in any sport or any competition, no, you don't basically win a competition by being zen. You know, you can be zen and trusting and calm, but then you've got to do that extra where you push yourself and you, in a sense, go to that next level of challenge in your life. So right now, that's what we're going through. We're changing everything. I've been prompted to change everything in our business, from how our reception system is working, to how our membership site is working, to all the little details. Even this week, Sammy's been busy, for example, improving our password protection system and improving and going through all our PayPal accounts and changing our management system, going through and checking all of our passwords and logins are all up to date, and fundamentally changing a few other things. So I'm sharing this with you because understand that the bigger the manifestation that you're giving yourself, the more the universe will push you. That's the reality. The more you're going to get pushed and the more you're going to get challenged. Who likes being challenged, by the way? Who likes being pushed to that, or challenged in a good way to go to those next levels? Who actually enjoys challenge? Yeah, Rochelle, James, Robert in moderation. Yeah, it's part of flow. It's the two things working together to ultimately bring success. Yeah, I love what Mitchell says. Very honest, Mitchell. I'm learning to enjoy challenges. I've had to open up to my dark side. It's been wanting me to face challenges for years. Yeah, a lot of people avoid challenges, and the truth is, the best. Here's a little tip for you: the more you challenge yourself, and I'll stress that again, the more you challenge yourself, the less the universe will challenge you. Now, that's a little profound one. If you can get that, the more you challenge yourself, the less the universe or your higher self will challenge you. Because your higher self's got you on a mission here to do that. And if you're basically living in it's very interesting, and this is a very deep universal law. But for example, you'll notice groups that are like totally what I call into complete zen and kind of almost fading out of society and not being involved in society and almost kind of zoning out, are often the ones that experience persecution, like the Falun Gong movement in China and groups like that, which of course we don't in any way. That's completely wrong, and it's not something, and something which I'm very passionate about helping people going through that. The point is, when you don't challenge yourself at all, that's when you generally start getting challenges, because we are meant to be growing all the time and then taking time out. So by contrast, if you're always challenging yourself and not taking time out, that's often when you get injuries or you get sick or other things that force you to calm down. So there's a little bit of a clue for you of manifestation. Understand it's like an ebb and flow. It sort of comes and goes. And that's when you start to manifest most powerfully, when you learn to kind of dance that kind of walk of going in hard, letting go. Going in hard, letting go. Like going on the dance floor, then taking a break. Going on the dance floor, taking a break. So this is really important to get that. The secret is to be able to let go and then challenge and do it together. So who's getting what I'm saying here? Or who's kind of getting what I'm saying here? Robert, excellent. Yep, excellent. Okay, good. Because this will really help you with manifestation. And this is when you start to get the best results, when you can create the manifestation and then let go, and then let go of the preconceived ideas of how it all works. So that's why today now, we're going to be looking at manifestation a lot more in how to make it know in daily life. So, and then of course leading into week 6 and 7, where we'll be covering more manifestation, advanced energy reading, and then covering specifically tax and protection and wealth protection, and then wealth building. So ultimately realize today that everything is energy, and energy can be transformed. So everything can be transformed. So as you go into the day, really create the intention. And I'm really challenging everyone, just like I said last week, set yourself up with a really great intention. So something that's going to challenge you, that will really, really challenge you going. So tax, negative money experiences, investment blockages, speeding fines. When you start to realizing that all of this is a direct manifestation of your own hologram and what you're creating, and what you're allowing. And it's important to understand how our soul actually works. Like, who's heard of what's called the oversoul? Or who knows what the oversoul actually is? Max, great. The oversoul, Jason, no idea what that is. Well, all of us, we've got our physical body, and then we've got what's called our soul and our spirit, okay? And our spirit is like our higher self. So that's what we call our higher self, or what some people call it, or really what I call as our 9th dimensional self. So in the 9th dimension, we've got this higher soul, which basically is guiding our evolution on this planet and working with the light beings and the masters and the council of the brotherhood. And they're basically overseeing our evolution and our path on this planet. Most people just have no connection with their oversoul at all. And hence that's why their life seems to be going random and doing all kinds of shit, but really they're no relevance to what they think they're meant to be doing. So the oversoul. The oversoul, though, the more that you start to connect with your oversoul, and ultimately, for those of you who have a desire to ascend, which means in this lifetime, it's really merging your soul with your oversoul, and ultimately then with your Christ-conscious soul. Because all of us have what's called different layers of our soul, or different incarnations happening at any one time. And put it in other words, we're a multi-dimensional being having a human experience. And not just in the Bible, but in almost every major religion, most spiritual stuff, and even great scientists now are starting to believe we're a multi-dimensional beings that are living in a quantum realm, and that all this earth is just a human experience and a physical representation. It's a much lower vibration than what's happening in these higher realms. The 3D is quite a low vibration. So it's what anything that becomes solidified matter is a lower vibration, and that's how you solidify matter. When you increase the vibrations, that's when you become more light and when you become more liquid. This is not only spiritual, but this is also scientific. So scientifically, if you can speed up vibrations fast enough or frequency fast enough, that's when you can actually move into light. And for example, that's how under microscopes and under certain testing, walls are seen as liquid. So really important to understand this, that walls are seen as liquid. So we, of course, had a look at science, and we came up with the 5 conclusions, which was the quantum realm is real, but there is an etheric or mystical quantum realm, and matter is preceded by consciousness, not the other way around. Now, I can sense that people are getting this, and even if you don't get this in your head, feel it being imparted, because right now, if you feel into my energy, I'm actually still in quite a deep state from last night. So I'm in a deep state, and if you really open yourself up, this stuff can go deep into your heart and into your deep unconscious. And that's where you desire this knowledge to be, because then you will start actually living this in your life. So who's feeling that, by the way? Who's kind of feeling the lower, more zen, or the kind of the more deeper stuff that's happening today in the webinar? Who's actually tuning in and feeling it? Yeah, Rochelle, James, yeah. So really tune into that, because that's, even in hypnotism, that's the basic way that things go deep into your subconscious, is by slowing down the energy and going more slower and more softer and more deeper into the deeper layers. So the quantum realm is real. Interconnectedness of all things. That is, things or objects aren't localized, but are spread throughout the parts. In other words, they're a hologram. So things or objects aren't localized, but are spread throughout the part. In other words, we're living a holographic reality. So we have our oversoul, which we're connected to, which is our 9th dimensional higher self, which, by the way, is connected to all the higher level knowledge. And that's how you're able to hear these things and feel these things through the operation of what's called your oversoul. So this is a whole teaching in itself, but the best way to think about it is that your human incarnation is just your human kind of form that you're living in, but you've got a multi-dimensional self of you which is guiding your evolution on planet Earth. And the more you can connect with your oversoul, you'll find the more you start to get in your path, and the less what's called random, unexpected things happen. Your life almost becomes completely within your control because your oversoul is guiding you. And even simple little things, like when I mentioned about this soreness in my mouth, where for a whole week my oversoul had been telling me, I've been getting this message to not eat and just simply go into a deep fast. So in the end, my oversoul said, okay, you're not listening. And so now what I'm doing is, as a result, I'm doing more meditation in that, and it's amazing. As a result, I'm doing it. I don't really have any pain in my mouth at all. It just means whenever I eat, it's a bit sore, which is quite funny. So you even realize that everything is synchronistically and in a detailed way, creating your reality for you to ensure you go on a certain path and stay on that path. I noticed, for example, 2 months ago, I got a message, and some of you may remember, I was told to pull myself more completely out of the system and focus on being a spiritual teacher and a prophet and help clear people of energy and do shiftings with people. And that was my path. And I moved on that path, but the one thing I didn't do was start shutting out my tax agent license, which is an ATO license. And I got another message in January to do it, and I held off because I got busy. And I think partly there was still a fear of letting go of the old. And sure enough, I get a letter from the government. And the funny thing was, the letter wasn't really a major issue. It was just some inquiries on a couple of things. But I started to laugh because I knew my higher self was telling me, if you keep on resisting it, we're going to have to start getting other things involved. And we're going to have to start, doing things to basically give you a shove up the arse to make sure that you actually step in and do your path and follow the very path that you're meant to be walking. So it's pretty funny when you think about it. Space and time doesn't actually exist. It's all relative. So that's the other one. And really important that we see that time and space, it really is relative. It just doesn't actually exist. Things don't exist until they're actually observed. Particles can become waves and vice versa, and particles remain waves until that point. So that's the other thing that science showed, that things don't exist until you actually observe them and create them into a solidified form. This, by the way, is a secret to remote viewing, where you learn to actually view unconscious data to get answers on sporting games or financial investments or trading, or even on personal levels. I've learned to harness this to such a degree now, I am even able to, for example, move myself into the future, a probable future, and like explore, say, 2 or 3 probable futures. And I even did this recently. About 3 days ago, I just allowed myself to walk on a path without overthinking it, and just imagine myself drifting down this path where I hadn't let go of my tax agent license, for example. And in 3 months from now, I had all kinds of stuff going on in the future. Then I came back in the present time, and I moved myself into the future, and 3 months' time, where all I was doing was my spiritual teaching and focusing more on trading, and there was so much light 3 months from now. And I've been doing this kind of stuff for years, but more and more. So once you realize that, but the more you just let go, your unconscious can actually tell you where you're going and guide you and even warn you on your path and show you where you're going off path, and you just start to see it and know it. Alternate timelines or realities are a strong possibility and make sense. So these are really important to understand with manifestation, but all things are interconnected. That, by the way, makes it very important that if you're in a toxic relationship, for example, that will affect your manifestational life and make life harder for you. So one of the things, for example, that for those of you who are desiring a relationship or a really good relationship, understand if you create a manifestation around that, you can guarantee you'll go through some challenges to sort you out to make sure you're able to do it. Because the truth is, if you've had toxic relationships, the only thing that's in common is you. So that means you're creating it for yourself. So one of the things I found was that I started to immediately get challenged. So just keep that in mind. When I started to create manifestations around money and finances, if you had challenges, understand that you'll start getting things dealt with in your life and having to deal with things. Because that's, again, the only common one is you. So ultimately, the manifestation journey is exciting, but it's challenging as well, because basically you are entirely responsible for your own hologram. Basically, it's the ultimate in self-responsibility. Acknowledge that you are responsible for your path. Okay, any questions on that before we just quickly refresh on the water into wine? Any questions? All good for James? Excellent. So you may remember last week we went through this, so just a quick reminder, and we talked about this passage in John, and there was a marriage in Cana of Galilee, which was talking about the divine union. You may remember that Jesus was like the higher mind. His disciples are like the servants or unconscious that are designed to serve the higher mind. And the mother of Jesus is like that subconscious feminine voice of doubt that came in and put fear. And you may remember, and this is where most people found it profound, Jesus said, "What have I to do with you?" In other words, quickly smashing that voice. You just cannot let that voice of doubt come into your manifestation. You just need to know that you've got it or something better. That's generally my rule. I've got it or something even better. Because, for example, you may set a manifestation for, say, let's say 50,000 a month, and then 3 months' time, for example, you have actually gone backwards, it seems, on the surface. But then when you look at it more closely, you've got a better relationship in your life. You've actually got you're finding that you're actually doing work that you enjoy a lot more and things like that. So I know when I first started setting in manifestations for 10xing, I noticed that the first thing that happened was all this stuff around me resigning my tax agent license. And what on the surface seemed like a step back. It actually really did. It seemed like a really big step back. But I trusted it because these are the messages I was getting. And now at the moment, I'm starting to be shown new things, and I'm actually starting to see, oh my gosh, I could never have achieved the manifestation I put into place doing what I was doing before. It just wasn't possible. So my higher self kicked in and started to do this. So understand that you must cast down that voice of doubt viciously. And then once you cast down that voice, it said his mother said to the servants, whatever he says to you, do it. And then, as you know here, you got to take action, and that's what verses 6 and 7 are about. You take action. You can't just basically ignore it and just sort of sit back and wait, que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. You must actually take action. So if you set a manifestation around finance or income, do something about it. If it's around getting a new and better place, start looking at houses. If it's around about getting a high quality relationship, well, go do a dating course or do some work around yourself or start actually going on dates again if you haven't been dating for a while. So things like that. So generally, very important that you take action of some kind, because even if the action doesn't actually lead you anywhere, it gets you started. And Mitch gave a perfect example of where he just trusted his intuition and did various things. The next minute ends up meeting a guy who he has a message for. And if I could count the number of times that I did that in my life, you could hardly count it on any hand. But the point is to take action, because by doing something, one of my greatest manifestations I can remember I did years ago was I manifested this amazing house with an amazing deal right where I desired it. And what I actually did was I actually put a manifestation out to have a house by the water rent-free. I did this in 2001, because I started a business. I was really going from scratch. I sold everything to get my health right. And I really just did not desire. I desired to live a simple life for a time. So I just created a manifestation that I had a house fully provided for me on the ocean. And as soon as I did that, I just gave thanks it was done. And the next day after I did that, I was just sitting there and I started thinking about my uncle's unit, because I thought, we haven't been there for a while. And the next minute I realized, oh my gosh, my uncle's unit is on the ocean. Now, my uncle basically lives in America. So I just messaged him and I said to him, how would you feel, seeing as your house is not being used for a couple of years, if I just move into your house and I'll pay all the expenses for it and live in there? And he goes, yeah, okay, that sounds good to me. So for the next basically year or so, probably about 10 months or so it would have been, and about a year, I lived in my uncle's house completely rent-free while I was getting on my feet on the ocean in one of the best parts of Fremantle, only paying maintenance like strata fees. That was literally it. So I've numerous times with houses years ago when I was first practicing manifestation, I'd do things like that. Another time I created a manifestation to get a house in a certain area, but through a private landlord, and nowhere could I find anywhere where private landlords are advertising in that area. So I thought, well, I've got to do something. So I just started going to real estate agents just to look at houses. And when I was looking at about the third or fourth house, a guy out the front of the lawn on the other house over the road was looking at me, and when he asked me if I was looking for a house, I said yes, and he said, yeah, well, I've got a private rental here. And to cut a long story short, bingo, I was over his house and basically had a private rental. And just like that, I had his house, private rental, very, very low rent. He was quite happy to give me a good deal. And bingo, I had that. So it's very important to take action when you manifest and really keep doing it. So this is a little bit more of the kind of boring part of this training this week. But this is the kind of stuff that actually causes the miracles to start happening. So notice that Jesus told them to fill it with water. They never would have turned the water into wine if they didn't first fill it with water. That's important to get. So once the voice of doubt was eradicated, they did then need to go ahead and do something. So they gathered together some pots, they filled it with water, and then he said, draw it out and bear it to the governor of the feast. So in other words, when they were drawing it out, I guarantee you on the surface, it still looked like water. But by the time it reached the governor of the feast, it became wine. Anyone who I've ever met who's a miracle healer or any who works in that realm, that's what they do. Exactly what I'm reading to you here. I have a friend who owns a massive building, rent-free, over in Melbourne, who came as a migrant from Sri Lanka, no way in a heck could he get a loan from the bank, but he knew he was called to start a big church in Melbourne. So what he did was he just knew. So he created his manifestation, and he then went, and he just so knew, he went and signed the contract to buy this land, settlement happening, I think it was in 12 months' time. And then he just started telling his people what he had done. and just giving thanks for the building. So he signed a contract for $600,000 about 10 years ago when he literally did not have the money. And before he knew it, people were starting to just turn up and give him money, and someone else said, we feel to give you this money towards your work. And by the time the contract came to be fulfilled, he owned the building outright. So keep in mind, he signed a contract to buy a house, but he had no idea how he was going to pay for it. Now, you have to certainly have faith to do that, but that's exactly, by the way, how I started my business. When I first really grew my business exponentially, I just knew that I was meant to be in the city of Perth, but the rents at the time were huge. So I was going by my logical mind, and every place that I went to outside of Perth and around the suburbs that were cheaper, the door kept shutting on me. When I finally went into the city of Perth, one of the most expensive offices, the door just opened for me. And literally my income 10x'd over the next 6 months, literally 10x'd. And I knew that I was on the right path. I was terrified, but I went my income 10x'd for that time. When I first started out, I was on a fairly moderate income. I was fine with it. Within 12 months, I 10x'd, and it would have been 9 to 12 months. And that was because I took that step out and did that. So it's very important that the bigger your manifestation, you will be called upon to take a big step. So if you're not ready for that yet, just start small. For those of you who are ready to be challenged, that's what you do. You know, very, 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 very important. So, yeah, Mitch, bring it on. So then the rule of the feast tasted the water that was made wine. He said, every man at the beginning sets forth good wine, and men have well drunk. Then that which is worse comes out, but you have kept the good wine up until now. So I'm sure you can see that is a pretty exciting, pretty good, and that's exactly how this actually works. So now I'm just going to quickly address some questions which have been emailed this week. And I find this is quite a useful way to actually do that. One question I was asked was, do I need to use the codes every single time in which I do it? So do I have to actually do that? And I've been practicing every day, as you've mentioned, but not feeling any different than usual, which is not a good feeling. That was another one I was given. So on the codes, my short answer is it's a very good discipline for now to do the codes, okay? I'd really encourage you for now to be using them, and the only reason why is you're training your mind to follow a ritual. And for those of you who know NLP, even though this is not NLP, the fact is if you do something and get results, it creates an anchor in you. So I find for me that as soon as I imagine the Tribeca code, number one, it does have a spiritual higher dimensional frequency that encodes your third eye and your various auric field, but subconsciously you also start to develop a little bit of a sense of when you use this that you're manifesting. As time goes on, you'll find that, like with me, sometimes I just do the manifestation, I see the code in my mind quickly, and then I just give thanks that it's done. But even so, I still regularly do the Tribeca code on what I'm doing, and even when I'm just imagining it quickly, I still do that myself. Out of interest, who was asking that question on this webinar? Because I was emailed that by somebody not on this webinar and then spoken to. Robert, yeah, this is a very common question that I find people do ask of me. And so this is why I felt to really do that one. So I would strongly encourage you for now to use the Tribeca code as you're doing it. So as you can see here, a couple of ones here also talked about people who are practicing but not really feeling any difference. And this is like, these two are actually from my last webinar I had, not from this particular one. But nevertheless, I answered them last time in week 5, so I felt to do that. So it's very important to realize that a lot of the gains that are happening are often just small and daily. And if that's what you're seeing, that's fantastic. So don't be attached to the feeling that you're going to get. I can remember when I started having these visitations from ETs that all of you know about, in all honesty, I wasn't attached to it, and it was unexpected. I can remember once it started happening regularly, I started to take it for granted and assume they turn up every time I do meditation. And then it was like for 30 days, they just vanished. They just stopped coming. And I was like, what's going on here? You know, why have they stopped coming? And last night was probably the first time for a while I just thought, you know what? I'm not interested in creating an intention to have any visitations. I'm just keen to go to a deeper level, let go of some of my past stuff and get more on my path, whatever it is I'm called to do. And the moment I did that, it all happened in a flood last night. I just got some beautiful visitations happen to me. So, yeah, non-attachment to the outcome is so important, Nolene. It's very, 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 very important. And this is where a lot of people go really wrong in manifestation, like go really wrong. So, it's almost being so chilled you don't care, says Max. I couldn't agree more. Nolene, this is where I have really gone wrong in the past. So yes, it's very interesting, isn't it? So very important not to get too attached to a feeling or what you feel should actually happen to you. So it's really, 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 really important. So I cannot emphasize that one enough. So some comments which may help on these ones here is that faith, a clear intention and taking action are critical. However, equally critical is letting go and letting God and know that we're all different in how we experience. So that's really important to understand that it really is the truth, that we are really, truly all different in how we experience. And that's, so although we have faith, just realize for some people, you will feel an instant, incredible, spectacular change happen in your life as you do manifestation. Rochelle says, I'm getting closer to a relationship, starting to really not care after my last dates. Rochelle, if that's the truth, I couldn't agree with you more. I can remember, I've got a fantastic partner now, and that is exactly what happened with me. In fact, I'll even go further, Rochelle. I'll share my story because this is a classic manifestation for me. I can remember that I was seeing a girl, and in all honesty, I'd actually hit the point probably about 18 months ago where I decided, you know what, I really just like the idea of having multiple women and not actually being attached to one, because it's just too much of a distraction. As soon as I get into a relationship, it's just, I'm not seeming to get my needs fully met. I'm not blaming anyone, but just for whatever reason, this just seems to keep happening to me. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to enjoy having multiple girls. And I was so much like that when I'd known Sammy for about a year, and she'd been and she came over to do some work with me on some stuff because she'd actually originally been a client. And there was no question that we connected really well, like we just did, like all the way through. And then I can remember when she started making it pretty clear to me she was very interested in me. I remember because I was so unattached to the whole thing, whereas before I probably would have been trying hard and really, you know, I just said to her, look, you know, I'm really not looking for a relationship right now. I'm really just looking to I just really want some, and actually said, to be honest with you, I just want good sex and good connection. That's all I'm interested in. I said, I've got someone else I'm seeing at the moment. And I said, I'm not really into her fully. And I said, I just don't want anything where I'm tied down right now. I just said, I've got a path, I've got a mission. I just said, I just feel like some fun. So she said, yeah, look, that sounds good. And when we first started connecting with each other, that's really where I was. And the funny thing was with her, I remember saying to her just a month ago, I said, how was it? I said, you were the first girl I was ever with that for the first 6 months we were together, you know, I was basically with someone else as well. So I had two women at the same time. But I always thought you were fine with it. And she said, well, I just had created an intention that I'd have an unconventional relationship. So I kept laughing and thinking, I've certainly got that. And she said, and I really thought to myself, look, I don't want to have kids. I don't want to be tied down too heavily myself right now. So it's ridiculous if I start saying that I want a guy exclusive to me, well, then I'm really just going against everything that I've manifested, because I'm wanting something that's unconventional, something that's free, something where I'm not tied down, I can come at my own pace. So she thought, if I want that freedom, I need to give it back. So Sammy was probably the first girl that got that, and she too was unattached. She thought, whatever happens, happens. I don't really care. And then one day we realized that we actually were really into each other, and then now, of course, so around June, we fully, really more deeply committed, and it was only her and I. And then really since that time, it's been incredibly smooth. And it was because we were completely unattached, literally probably as unattached as you could ever imagine, where in all honesty, I just didn't care what happened. So these are really important. So see today more as a consolidation, like I said, of the last 4 weeks. That's why we're doing that deliberately today, to really consolidate the learnings. Understand too, the blockage is always enough. It's very important to realize it's always in you. So letting go and detach from the outcome. And another very important one, patience and divine right timing, as you can see here. Patience and divine right timing. So that one is a hard one for people to get, but sometimes things happen in divine right timing. Sometimes you create a manifestation to something spectacular, and it just basically, a year later, nothing's happened in that area. But just understand that sometimes there can be a process for unraveling. So when you're doing a manifestation and being patient, sometimes you can also, what I often do is if things seem to be delaying, I always ask, is there a way I can speed this up with grace and ease? I always ask that. I don't ask, is there a way to speed this up? Because there may well be, but it may involve you suddenly having a major collapse or suddenly having a big breakdown or something. So I always say, is there a way I can speed this up with grace and ease? And sometimes I get a yes, sometimes I actually get a no, but this is going to take time. And as an example, the 10X in my business, I asked, can this be sped up? And I was clearly told, I said, only in some sense, this is going to take some time because we're getting the system in place. That's what I was told very clearly. So just focus on the system right now and building a system that is capable of being 10X. So yeah, no one's finding this, especially in trading, but translating across all areas of life, exactly. So codes are any kind of set process are there to guide the unconscious mind. That's all that they're doing. So, and the other thing I'll put there is lessons to learn and things to deal with. That's another equally important thing. That's funny here. So basically lessons to learn and things to deal with is another part of manifestation. So a good example is in a relationship. Sometimes we've just got things to learn. And I always like to tell the story, and this is a fact, that the way banks train fraud experts to identify counterfeit money is they get you to see a whole lot of counterfeit notes first and then show you the real. And once you've seen lots of counterfeit notes, the real is obvious. So sometimes to get the truth in a relationship, you're going to need to have a few bad ones to get a good one. Not always, but some people, you'll need that. In financial stuff, sometimes you need to have a few challenging experiences to learn the right way. So with trading, for example, knowledge is a classic, You start to eventually learn what does work and what doesn't work. And you become very good at learning what does work and what actually doesn't work at all. So but the key to realize is that codes or anything like I said, unconscious work are there to guide the unconscious mind, and it's proven in remote viewing this increases accuracy. So one of the things this is why I loved learning remote viewing, and in all honesty, I reckon anyone who's sincere about manifestation and mastering them, you'd find remote viewing to be very, very good learning. Because it really does teach you to quieten the mind. And that's why we're going to be teaching a little bit more about that very shortly today, just going into that before we go into the manifestation. So altered brain state. So this leads us straight into that one. Because throughout history, this whole idea of the altered brain state has been a major component of humanity's evolution. When you actually go back in time to even ancient technologies and cultures, you'll regularly see pictures of people taking psychedelics or plant medicines, or even religious groups called the Quakers, who would do experiences where they go into an altered state and they'd be shaking or in trances for hours. Hypnotism is all about learning to go into a deep altered state to be able to then imprint the deeper layers of the unconscious mind. To understand that part of manifestation as well is learning to master and get control of your brain waves and your brain centers and be able to go down into a deeper level. So very, very important. So this is what's called, once you're age 13 onwards, this tends to be most people's waking state. This is when your mind is really active and thinking heavily. It's very interesting if you ever go and get a brain measurement apparatus like Muse or do neurofeedback, and you'd be surprised how much you're in this beta, especially when I first started using Muse, M-U-S-E, which is a little headphone you can buy, which can measure your brain state frequencies. And you actually get a little bit frustrated after a while because like far out, you know. I seem to be in brain state, in a heavy brain state, more often than not, really, which is kind of like really annoying. So, but yeah, so that's the whole point. So this is the state you're in when you're basically ages 7 to 12. So you're not really influenced by the mass mind, whereas in the 14 hertz plus you are. You're still there a little bit, but much less so. It's the kind of state you're in when you're listening to a webinar, like listening to me right now, or when you're watching TV, as an example, or you're just lying there daydreaming. That's a classic alpha state. The theta, there's two thetas, as I call them. There's a 7 hertz, which is the magic number, where people have what's called aha moments. This is where people start having aha moments and tremendous what's called spiritual shifts. And I learned this from a really advanced guy called John Thompson, who some of you have met. He's one of the top experts in Australia on brain technology and neurofeedback and, brain states of consciousness. So the 7 hertz is, as Max puts it here, a cool way to put it. It's a spiritual shift where you actually enter new realms and deeper frequencies. So when you hit the 7 hertz and stay there, and it was amazing when I used to go and get measured brain training with John Thompson for a long time, and I started getting some regular 7 hertz. He said, you must be going through a real spiritual awakening. At the time, I really was. And he said, be mindful whatever comes up in that period, because it's normally a profound lesson. And then the 4 to 6 hertz is a portal between this realm and the next realm, where deep healing and reprogramming happens, where you let go and your higher self heals you. So when you're going into a deep state and starting to see things happen, this is what's starting to normally go on by that time. So theta, in fact, many of the greatest, for example, people like yogis who are doing great healings in India are generally permanently in a theta state most of the time. They're in that, they've trained their brain to be in that deep theta state pretty much all the time. So it's really profound. And delta state, 0 to 3 hertz, sleep state. So that's when you're in a sleep, when you're completely connected to that higher realm. That's when you're in that 0 to 3 hertz. So that's a sleep state. Interestingly, a couple of the great yogis who used to do extraordinary miracles in India, they were put on this on brain measurement apparatus, and they were finding that many of these yogis were actually in a delta state while they were awake. Now, if you ask how is that possible, I don't really know. But basically, apparently, if you really do remote viewing training long enough, and Gerald O'Donnell, who's a master in training people, and I know Rochelle's using her CDs right now, as is Christine Norley, he basically, it's a good starting point to actually help you train your brain into a deeper state. I tend to find there's a limit in the usefulness of his training, but it's very useful to get you started. And he actually says that you can actually train yourself to go into a very deep state most of the time. So, altered brain states. Think of brain states like a building, as Gerald O'Donnell puts it. So second floor is the beta, where all the activity is happening. And if you're on the beta level, you can't change the programs because they're all stored in the first floor, and also there's some that are stored on a deeper layer. So you can't start changing programs until you go to the first floor. And then when you go to the ground floor, this is when you go beyond the alpha and you're starting to connect with the universal mind. And then in the basement, the delta, that is the universal mind, source, God, oneness, or what's called the ultimate of the quantum realm, when you're fully in the quantum realm. many of you notice when you're doing our clearings or doing our manifestations and using the codes, many of you notice you fall into a half sleep state. Who's actually had that happen to you, where you've moved into a half sleep state during one of our clearings? Yeah, and pretty much all of you. That means you made a shift into a theta state of mind. So that means your brain frequencies would have dropped down to a 7 or less than 7. It's very important to realize that ages 0 to 3, a child is pretty much in delta all the time. And from ages 3 to around 6 or 7, they're in a theta state. That's why be very, very mindful what you're speaking over your children if they're under the age of 7. Because anything from 0 to 6 will pretty much condition them for their future. So we were speaking wealth and abundance and strength over our boys pretty much from when they were born, and wealth and success. So it's not surprising now that they're absolutely flourishing in what they're doing. Mind you, at the moment, they're making me laugh because they're on this kind of project at the moment of challenging themselves to go beyond their comfort zones. And what that's involving is doing things like, William was videoed yesterday. His brother's dared him yet to basically go onto the beach and then run screaming and pretend to trip on the sand and then run around screaming and run around like a maniac for about 30 seconds. And then he did it and then just threw himself into the water with a big belly flop. And it was just the funniest thing. And then they dared him the other day to go and buy some drinks at a movie and then pretend to fall over and spill it, which he did. And I was just like, gosh, guys. But they're just doing things like that to stretch their comfort zone and embarrass themselves. Yeah, Mitt says, I feel I need to do some stuff like that. Yeah, it's very effective to actually get you out of your, what I call adult serious way of being. I mean, Jesus said, unless you become like a child, you can't inherit the kingdom of heaven. And yeah, I was laughing because they said, where did I get that from? They said, because mum's very serious. I said, I hate to admit it, guys, you got it from me. I said, people don't really know what I was like as a teenager in my 20s. I said, I remember when I was 17, I said, my cousin and I stole my uncle's police siren and drove around pretending to pull over cars. You know, this is like 30 years ago. And, you know, I still look back and go, I can't believe I did that. But yeah, because my uncle had a police siren and we just pretended to pull over a few cars. And another time we, it would have been, gosh, about far out. Yeah, I think it was just like 35 years, 30 something, about 32 years ago or something, 33 years ago or something now. It was a long time ago, put it that way. Then we used to do things like I would be dead and I would run out. We were at a church meeting where there was about 800 people there and no one was dancing. And I ran out in front of everyone and started dancing like a maniac. And later on, the church minister said, you know, I love this. I was embarrassed as heck. But the minister actually said about me, he said, man, I love this guy. This is a leader. This is a man without fear. And I was just laughing and thinking, I was shitting myself. But, you know, and I would do things like deliberately to upset people. I play piano on stage when I was in the church, and I wear a towel around my head and just things like that. So these are the kind of things that get you out of your comfort zone. And funny enough, when you're having laughter and you're really pushing yourself out, you notice that your confidence goes up and you start manifesting easier. And some of you know, but I love to do things like go and dive in the water and on the beach and actually swim. Yeah, you know, I love to just go in and dive in the water and just, even if it's freezing cold, I'll just jump in straight away before I've got time to think about it. So part of moving into an altered brain state is learning to do that, learning to just let go and just let God, so to speak, just completely let go and let God. So this is where cool downs, meditations work really, really wonders. So how can you alter your brain state? Obviously by a webinar, like what we're doing now. The other one is you can actually train, you know, your brain through machinery into a deep state. This is where neurofeedback works really, really well. So I probably should just write this here. I haven't really got this here. Which is kind of what we're doing here. So hypnotism or meditation. So Forced inducement, psychedelic drugs. Neurofeedback is a great way. I mean, I do lots of that. I haven't done it for quite a while now, but I'm thinking of going back into it for another 4 weeks or so. Because neurofeedback is a great way just to slow down your whole brain frequency and get it used to just readjusting. And it's amazing the shifts, because you actually get given a chart which shows your brain waves throughout the session. So the Navy and the military soldiers used to be put through extensive neurofeedback training before they were sent out as snipers or sent out into combat to quieten their brain down. They've also learned neurofeedback was used heavily to prepare remote viewers to get ready to do that. So for those of you who are doing my remote viewing training or keen to do one when we do it, I would strongly recommend you do some neurofeedback at some stage. It will really help you. So a neurofeedback session, even just doing one, is the best way to get accurate measurements of your brain state. So learning to go into an altered state, there is actually a book called Changing Fire or Stealing Fire or something like that, which talks about all these different things that were done to create altered states of consciousness and why many people go and do crazy things like skydive and all that sort of stuff. So part of learning to manifest is learning to get much greater command of your brain state. So any questions on that before we go more into the manifestation? It's very important to understand this whole idea of taking charge of your brain state and mastering it. Really important. What about anchoring the brain states to trigger them at will? Max asked. That's actually a brilliant question, Max. There's various ways you can anchor. Gerald O'Donnell speaks about it, and I know one thing that you can do is there's various ways. I mean, one of the things that I was taught by a mentor is saying mental level theta every time you're in a deep state. So you just say it, and in that way, every time you say it, you do it automatically. I find for me, using the codes is a way I've anchored it. As soon as I stare at a code and start to breathe 4 times through my nose, hold for 4 counts, and breathe out of my mouth through 8, it's like I instantly go into an alpha state. I'm in an alpha state before I can blink. So as soon as I slow my breathing down now, and I look or imagine the code, I just instinctively slow down. So like right now even, you might notice it. So just imagine right now the Tribeca code in your third eye. And breathe in through the nose for 4. And hold for 4. And breathe out of the mouth through 8. And breathe in through the nose for 4. Hold. And out of the mouth for 8. And I'm sure by now, you would already be feeling your brain state just slowing down a bit. Like who noticed that straight away? Who just straight away noticed that you slowed down? Yeah, Jason and Nolene. Who noticed that my voice slowed down quite distinctly as I was doing that? James McGower says, with closed eyes, will tilt gaze 5 to 10 degrees will bring you to alpha. Yep. Yeah, that's one way to do it. But yes, I can feel already it just slowed things down. So things like that is one definite way you can do this. So this is why I have this 5-step process. Create, command, and clear are the first 3. That's how I think of it. Create, command, clear. So you create the manifestation and formulate it, and then basically move into the requisite brain state. In fact, in all honesty, you could probably make it a 7 stage, really, because number 1 would be create, number 2 is go into the brain state, number 3 is command, number 4 clearing, number 5 would be taking action, number 6 would be letting go and letting God. And then number 7 would be watching for clues to see it happen. But so I've put it into 5 steps, basically. So you create it and get yourself into a deep state. Then you command it. And think of it a bit like personal training for those of you who've ever done personal training in the gym. You'd know that the reason that personal trainers get good results for people is because they give them a structured set program to follow. And I know one of the guys in this webinar, James Buchanan. James is actually a very good, personal trainer himself. So, and I find personal trainers absolutely get very good results doing a course like this, simply because as soon as I correlate to personal training, they go, oh yeah, and they make the neuro association. Because, personal trainers would know, and James will back me up on this one, that if you get 2 people come in the gym and one's just doing random exercises as they feel like it, and one's got a structured program, in 6 months' time, the one with the structured program will shit all over the one who's just walking around random. And I know for me, but since doing regular personal training, my body just looks really good. Like it's toned, it's fit, and my joints and muscles feel really good. So remote viewing found that even natural psychics who were the best in the world couldn't compete with trained remote viewers who went through these processes and went through remote viewing training, neurofeedback, and structured protocols to access the unconscious. They found over time the remote viewers basically shuttle over the psychics. So understand that what you're learning today will generally beat psychics any day of the week, because what you're doing is you're learning to take control of your own unconscious mind. So create the manifestation, command it, then by intention clear the blocks, take action, let go. So let's just have a quick look and break up these different steps. So we've mentioned this before, but I'll say this again. The more specific and the more clear you are in your manifestation and what you want to see happen, the more easy the manifestation will happen, and the more likely you can manage the results. So the more specific and the more clear you are, the more easy the manifestation will happen, and the more likely you can measure the results. Being vague does not work. Now, there's a fine balance here, because sometimes the best intentions are just to sometimes just be open to what happens in the way it's meant to happen. But just understand, the more detailed you are, the more likely you are to manifest and know when you've actually got it. So Max says, can you go overboard with the specifications? The short answer is yes and no. You can do, Max, yes. But overall, what I do is, if you be very specific in what you desire, it certainly gives your unconscious mind something to go with. Now, keep in mind, you've got a conflict going on, a subconscious conflict. This is why we do the clearing of the blocks. But number 2, also, what I tend to do is say, like, let's say, for example, I'm manifesting 100,000 a month. I might say, it is commanded that I, manifest $100,000 a month or more in the highest possible way for my best possible good. And by doing that, I'm creating an intention to say it can manifest in various ways. Because, for example, you may sit down and look at your at what you've made and go, oh, I'm not really making 100,000 a month. But what you're failing to do is measure everything, because remember, 100,000 a month is just some artificial value figure. You may actually, when you sit down, as someone recently very close to me did, who she was saying, she set herself a manifestation to be making at least, I think it was 100,000 a year or something like that, and as her income. And she said, I'm still only making 30 grand a year, or 20 grand. It wasn't that much. But I said to her, are you? And when we went through and actually looked at the benefits she was getting and how the things that were being paid for her and all the things that people have been led to look after her, she said, actually, I said, you're actually making an income equivalent to 80,000 or even close to 90. She goes, shit, yeah, I actually am. She goes, because she's just been manifesting all these things happening for her and all these doors opening for her and people paying for stuff for her. So I said to her, yeah, just have to look at all aspects. Don't just kind of look too literally at this. Because remember, your higher self doesn't think literally in linear. We don't live in a linear realm in the ninth dimension. In the 3D, we're linear. In the higher realm, we're anything but linear. So everything's more holographic. So it's important to look from a holographic perspective as well. So, but being specific and being clear will always get better. Mitch has a really good point. Yeah, absolutely, Mitch. Yeah, you need to look at everything, because what you perceive as not happening is what you'll keep getting more of. And I can remember when I first learnt this, and I sat down and looked at how much income I was making when I measured everything that was given to me. It was ridiculously high. And I was so grateful for it. And what was very interesting was very shortly afterwards, I started manifesting the exact amount, which I'd worked out was my income in all relative terms, in actual physical cash flow as well. So as you start to become seeing this and be grateful, Max says, this is aha. Exactly, Max, it's an aha. I couldn't agree with you more. Because you start to realize that the truth is, let's just say that you were living rent-free in a mansion on the beach, being a bit extreme here, and you had someone paying for you to travel all over the world whenever you desired to go to, but you only were making 20 grand, you know, a year, like 400 a week. It's not really realistic to say you're only making 400 a week. You're actually making a lot more. So in terms of abundance. So create your intention, be clear. So being specific, and I always recommend being specific, but being flexible. So it's a little bit like preparing a PowerPoint for a webinar. You notice that my PowerPoint is prepared before the webinar. I don't just sit there and make it all up as I'm going along. But in saying that, I'm flexible. So sometimes when I'm doing a presentation, things change. Aham Brahmasmi. So this is the formula. Here's another example. So this is basically another example of what you do, and I manifest 20,000 in my business. So setting yourself a nice specific ones. So that's another example. A third example, for those of you who've got health issues. Notice I'm not saying what some of you have done when you sent me manifestations, when I manifest getting healed from my sickness and my horrible back pain. I mean, that's basically what your subconscious hears. So that I manifest complete healing and perfect wholeness in my body. You can be specific and say I manifest complete healing, perfect wholeness, and my back feels amazing at all levels now. That's one thing you could say, and my back is feeling amazing. What's important is that you word it in a way that you can believe in. Because if you, let's say you're in chronic pain with your back, and then you're just writing down, but I have a perfect back and everything is perfect, you may feel a conflict between that. But if you say that I'm manifesting complete healing and perfect wholeness in my body, with my back feeling more amazing every day, that's very believable. It's feeling more amazing every day. That's what I did, for example, with because I knew subconsciously that with my whole mouth, this little mouth soreness, which I said I got, which really was just a minor thing. But when I tuned in, I intuitively told, you know, you're meant to go on at least 2 days fasting. So it's going to take you 2 days for this to fully release. And just be thankful that every day it's getting better and better. So I did that. And the truth is, I was amazed at the perfection of how I created this for myself. Because in all honesty, it doesn't hurt me at all. Like as I'm speaking now, there's no pain. I can drink whatever I want, no pain. But as soon as I eat food, it's kind of like it hurts a little bit. So, but that's an example. And it's already feeling better today from yesterday when I first woke up with it. So like today, 24 hours later, it's already feeling better than it was yesterday. So this is the way you can train your mind and start to move into this healing. Command. It is commanded by the laws of the golden liquid realm. So this is where you just command the manifestation. It's very important that you command and don't ask. Because commanding is like commanding your higher self and bringing it into being and getting empowered. So, Aham Brahmasmi. So just basically, just look at this Tribeca code now and breathe this into yourself and just allow this to activate you. I'm going to be back in 60 seconds. So just look into this one, hold it and breathe into it, hold for 4, out for 4, and then breathe out for 8. And as you're doing that, just start to think about what you'd like to manifest today. Because we're going to be doing a manifestation shortly. So this will just give you a chance to do that. And I'll come back on in 60 seconds. Okay, everyone. So is everyone getting a little bit of an idea what you actually would like to see manifested today? James, yes? Okay, excellent. And like I said, just step out. There's nothing to stop you. Just step into something and let your higher self just follow your intuition. Michelle, yes, excellent. So there's 3 people. Well, Max, whatever you feel to, long-term or something, just one thing. If you feel long-term, go long-term. If you feel short-term, go short-term. I generally recommend go short-term. It's always a good starting point. But even if you've got a long-term and a short-term, that's fine as well. So you can see how the Tribeca code starts to train you to go into that deeper state. So the third one is, of course, clearing the blockages. And I'm just going to share quickly on blockages and about what this is about. So here's an example here that the source of all blockages to my manifestation on training, this particular command I use a lot. Like even, for example, when I had this going on with my mouth yesterday, I used something similar to this. I use another code on that particular one called a specific healing frequency code that I sometimes use. But I use a Tribeca as well, and I just cleared the source of all blockages to what's going on in my mouth. As soon as I did that, I felt energy move out of my mouth, and I straight away got a quick vision of a little implant from a dark master, which I pulled out. And as soon as I pulled that implant out and I saw it all cleared, I got a turn straight away. That was when I got clarity as to why I had this, was because of these 2 days where I was meant to not be eating to meditate. So it's pretty powerful, and how this all works. So that's an example of how that works. So clearing the blockages is really important because that's when things start to happen. So why do blockages occur? Well, really very simply, a manifestation is a command with an energetic frequency. Once you command with intent, you activate the ids or blockages. And it's really important because something Rochelle just said then, something that Rochelle just said then was how this happens to her when she doesn't want to be around people. And yeah, look, it's interesting. A lot of people get sick because your higher self is telling you need to take time out. So what's far better is to just take time out when you need it, and then you won't need to get sick. In my case now, one of the reasons I'm generally in excellent health is I just drink water, and as soon as I feel not to eat, I don't eat. This is probably the first time in a long time I didn't listen to my higher self fully and felt not to eat. And even though I was eating light, I was told not to eat and just drink liquids and smoothies. And so it was interesting how I manifested a very small mouth sore, which just really, like I said, isn't that major, but just annoying enough where I can't eat, but I can do everything else and feel no pain. So it's very interesting about these blockages. So like you don't get rid of darkness by fighting it, you get rid of it by turning on the light. So a very good metaphor I was taught was manifestation is issuing a command for a dark room in your house to receive light. Clearing is walking down the hallway and removing the debris and items of furniture in the way to reach the room. Then the next required action is entering the room and turning on the light switch. So if you get that metaphor, you'll go, oh my gosh, it actually makes perfect sense, isn't it? Like who's had a bit of an aha moment with this? But manifestation is you say, turn on the light in my house. Someone walks down the hallway and removes things in the way, if there are any in the way, and then someone turns on the light switch. So anyone get that metaphor or helps you? Yeah, Max, yeah, it's a really good way of thinking of a manifestation. So there are various blockages which you can activate in relation to manifestations, relating to karmic, energetic, emotional, physical, and sometimes just straight out procrastination. And you may find out that there's an instinctual fear not to step into something by you. So what you're exposed to in your energetic environment affects you. So general comments, people around you can affect your manifestation, especially when you give up your power and do things to keep people happy or not upset them. So that's a good example. Higher consciousness people can easily fall into this trap and unwittingly lower their consciousness. So because of the fact we are interconnected and we're holographic, if you're living in a house with people or got like some close friends, you will, to a large degree, start to correlate your holograms together. And especially when you're having regular sex with someone, they've proven that DNA actually merges during sex with someone. So if you're having sex with a low consciousness person, you can rest assured that your consciousness will drop. So unless you're basically lifting that person and they're submitting to your consciousness to be taken to a higher level. So it's very important that you have someone of similar consciousness, or if someone is of slightly lower consciousness to you, that they're really submitted to allowing you to raise their consciousness. So it's very important to set your standards and let others rise to them and become detached from the emotions of others. So the mass mind as well. This is why we do clearings pretty much every day, because the truth is you are part of a mass mind collective consciousness that will inevitably affect you unless you energetically separate yourself and stay clean. So inevitably it will do that. So parental imprints are really important. Last night in my whole healing, as I mentioned that I went through, when I had that visitation last night, they took me back to age 4. In all honesty, I can't remember anything at age 4. And they just kept telling me there were some things that happened there which really affected me. And I had these kind of flashbacks. So even who you were in your early years had a significant impact. I can remember going back to when I was age 5, when I was bullied badly in an incident in the toilets. And they didn't physically hit me, but mentally intimidated me. And I was taken back there. This was like some months ago now. And I saw that a dark energy entered into my consciousness at the time. So that was cleared out of me. So I have what's called the 5 people rule, which means the 5 people who are closest in your life will affect your consciousness. So that's why be very careful who are your mentors or speaking into your life. Be very careful. Like, you know, even the other day, like my partner, Sammy, was just someone, a particular family member who was speaking into their life. And it was really throwing her on a couple of things she was thinking about. And she asked me, well, I thought about it. And I said, well, would you listen to this person for life advice based on where they're at? Are they living their purpose? And she said, no, definitely not. They're actually kind of a bit frustrated and off their path. I said, well, there you go. So is that the part, is that how you'd like to be living your life too? And she said, no. She said, well, don't listen to them. I said, very simple. And I'm the same. I just don't let people speak into my life unless they're at a very high consciousness. You know, I was very impressed the other week, for example, with Eliza Oakley, who, and I mentioned her, who basically is in one of my other courses, because she got a very clear download for me. But the first thing she said to me was, how would you feel if I shared something I got for you? Do I have permission? And I just said, depends what it's about. And then she said, it's actually really encouraging. It's about a particular thing. So I said, okay. And it was a brilliant message. And I really thanked her also for the respect she showed me. So be very careful to avoid conflicting energies around you. Distinguish what I call advisors, friends, and disciples. So I have people who I regard as friends I love to muck around with, but not people who I'd allow to speak into my life. Because they're just not people who are in a consciousness that I listen to. Advisors are people, for example, who are well ahead of me in a certain area. But the key is, don't let someone speak into your life unless you've asked them. And a very common trap is, I can remember years ago, for example, I was dating a girl who just decided that for whatever reason, it was her part in my life to be my life coach, to help me become the kind of man I was capable of being and sort me out of my life. And in the end, I actually said to her, I said, I'm not paying you to be a life coach. I'm desiring you to be a romantic partner and lover. So I said, I'm not actually interested in your life coaching. And she got very upset at me about that, and didn't take it too well. And that was among many other reasons, was the reason why it didn't last that long. But the point was, she just took it on herself. Whereas I said, just because you're my girlfriend doesn't give you any right to do that. You've got to earn that right. And I said to her, you know, I've got people in my life who I've been paying to give me life coaching advice and spiritual advice for years, and health advice who I trust. You haven't earned that trust yet. That's one of the things I love with Sammy. She's very wise in the area of health, But she said that, you know, she'd never put anything on me without permission, and she didn't. Now I ask her for advice on stuff because she's earned it and she's brilliant at her health. So that's the point. Otherwise, your consciousness will be affected, your manifestations will be delayed, and all the work you're doing here will be a waste of time. So you'll find as well, when you're doing manifestations, don't be surprised if people drop out of your hologram. So if suddenly someone that you've been close friends with flares up and you lose them, many people get traumatized and upset without seeing it's actually part of your hologram. It's part of what's happening to get you to the next level. I would guarantee you, if you're setting manifestations to say have a 50 grand a month income and you're hanging out with people who've got jobs and got low incomes and never invest and negative about money, I'll guarantee you that no matter what you do, you'll find it very hard to get ahead. So karmic patterning is very important as well. The law of fair exchange, nothing is free. In other words, everything that you're doing is fair exchange. It's one of the reasons why, for example, those of you, when you've invested in these programs, get great results, because unless you invest in something, you don't appreciate it. And this is one of the most fundamental laws of the universe. Even the Sunday webinars, for example, or places that you go and getting things for free or whatever, sometimes, you know, basically fair exchange can be given in other ways without money, for example. But general rule is nothing is free. And that's why I've always had that rule intuitively. So if I'm, for example, if I'm getting well taught, I'll always make sure I'm giving something. If I listen to something and I'm not enjoying what I'm getting, I won't. And a good example was I was part of a subscription recently for a cryptocurrency group. And in all honesty, the last 9 months, they've literally given me nothing, like absolutely nothing. So when they tried to bill my credit card again, I was just saying, no, I'm not interested. And now, of course, they've come to me offering me all these great bonuses, but really, they're just all these programs that they've just done up, but no real giving into what we're doing. So I was just like, no, well, and they've hardly done a live event for 6 months at all, like they used to do regular ones. They've hardly done one now. So your actions provoke a corresponding reaction as well. Unless you clear or work out your karma, they remain a pattern. So fair exchange, cause and effect, sowing and reaping. Mental blockages. You may be spiritually in a great state, yet have mental blocks or lack knowledge. For example, it's all very well to clear your financial self-sabotage blocks, but if you've got no skill or knowledge how to create wealth or do a business or invest or anything of that kind, well, it's possible still, but you're making it harder for yourself. So at the very least, listen to what you're being given. You know, you may get something unexpected, like go and play your music again a bit more, or you may be told to go and do a course or get a good mentor. And I can remember when I really 4 years ago did a manifestation around taking my spiritual healing to the next level and having my own healing center. Within about the first thing I was given was go find a good mentor. I was straight away told that you need someone to help you who's done it before. So this is why I worked with Toby Alexander for a while. And that's why I'm able to do what I'm doing now. So when you do a clearing, just understand that you'll be getting these messages and it's important that you act upon them. And I've mentioned here emotional blockages, in other words, managing your emotions, because if you go sad, angry, rage, grief, you can effectively go analogical and create what's called blocks or ids. So physical blockages. This is why it's important for manifesting. Eat well, exercise well, do regular health checkups, water, sunshine, nature, good posture, all that's really important. And I know for me, it's why I eat well, I do regular exercise, I get regular health checkups. I don't kind of delay on things. And even the other day, I had out of nowhere, my eye was really hurting for a few hours. I went straight into an eye doctor. Turned out I just got a little tiny grain of dust into there, pulled it out, and I was fine. Point was I acted on it straight away. So to get into an altered state, there's many ways to do it without abusing your body. So make sure your muscles are strong, you work out, you exercise, you get out in the sun, and you eat well, you drink well, drink lots of water, and things like that. So I'm going to come back and do this manifestation in a minute, but I'm just going to walk you through this process and really make sure we've got all aspects lined out. So like I said, very important to take some action when you get a manifestation. Do something. even if it can be as simple as you just writing out your plan for the day, or if it's a money one, that you take some money action. Sometimes, for example, when I first did a thing around money as a healer, I can remember instinctively being told to go put a whole lot of money into a healing ministry, which I did. And straight away, I noticed that some of you have experienced my healings where I've actually seen in the name of Christ and gone in and seen things going on in your backs or necks or hips or whatever. A lot of that started happening, I noticed, after I made that donation to that particular healing minister, a guy called Rano Bonke. That was one of the things I was told to do. So generally, you'll be told to take action of some kind. And then very important, letting go and letting God. So faith and patience. So once you've done it, and remember the water into wine, you need to let go and trust. So once you do it, you just know it's done and give thanks that it is done and trust that it is done. The truth is, if you don't trust that it's done and it's sitting there anxiously waiting for it, you're no different to someone who's planted a seed in their backyard to grow some crops or some food and sit there all day watching it, hoping that it will eventually, that it will come up. If anything, your consciousness is more likely to kill it, especially if you then start digging it up to keep picking it up. So there was an outworking of patience and process required, divine right order and timing. So very important. It's when we let go of our own strength and rely on the power of our own mind and hand over to God in their trust. It'll happen in ways that you don't expect, as I'll say at the bottom here. Or else be readjusted in a way you realize you don't actually want what you asked, and there was a deeper need you were seeking to be met. And your higher self will always meet the real deeper need, not the perceived need. A good example of that was where I put a manifestation to actually get, I think it was like a number of really hot women. This is honestly what I did. I'll just be honest with you. Really hot, attractive women who had a great emotional, sexual, spiritual connection with. I did this 2 years ago. And I ended up having one woman who I got all of that met. So I got what I manifested for, but in a different form. So because I was still attached to the outcome in the beginning, I couldn't understand why all the women around me started dropping off and that Sammy and I started getting on better. So just keep in mind, sometimes you manifest exactly, because when I first did something like that years ago, I actually did get it, because that was my path for the time. My marriage had ended, and I really just needed to get out there and just enjoy. So just keep in mind that what you manifest, letting go and letting God and trusting the process to bring it about in divine right order, divine right timing, and in the perfect way. My experience with people often expecting immediate manifestation often are a spoiled child in their life anyway, often impatient and narcissistic with a strong entitlement mentality. So they grew up either ignored and they're now trying to make up from it from scarcity, or else given everything on a platter. So just understand that there is an outworking of patience and process for manifestation. And if you get it instantly, that's a bonus. You know, sometimes it's instant, sometimes it takes time, because we have lessons to learn from our life experiences. So there is divine right order and there is divine right timing, which we experience in the way things happen for us. These are key elements for manifestation. There is a critical element of trust and letting go required for it to actualize. I love what Proverbs says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, which is your inner being, not your mental understanding. Lean not on your own understanding. Don't try to work it all out in your head, as you'll fail. In other words, again, this is all that intuition, accessing highest consciousness. In all your ways, acknowledge him. And the actual original meaning in the Hebrew language was adapt your ways to make them his ways, or the ways of your higher self, or the ways of Christ, realizing you're what needs to change, not things around you. And he'll direct your path. In other words, make your path straight in the line, not crooked or devious. In other words, you'll find things will just come together and be smooth. And I love this. This is one of my favorites. One for years I've always regularly quote to myself. Trust with all your heart. Just let go of your expectations how it's going to happen. Don't work it all out. Just learn the higher ways and the higher laws, and then watch it all come together. Then it says, do not be wise in your own eyes. Don't have a big ego and no mentality. Fear the Lord, be reverent, respect the higher law in mind. No one can do you harm when you break it, and there's a higher law which judges your actions and depart from evil. Harming others or breaking the golden rule of preserving life, liberty, and property, going against your own truth. So in other words, harming others, going against divine law or in your own truth. So in other words, be reverent, respect the higher law, respect karmic law, honor your own truth. It'll be health to your flesh and strength to your bones. It brings healing to you. So we'll probably talk about this one more next week, about the reasons why manifestations don't come to pass. So we will be covering this next week, but this is just to give you a sneak preview before we do the manifestation. So these are the most usual and common reasons, like lack of clear intention, doubt or unbelief, lack of patience, preconceived expectation, failure to take actions, karmic lessons, or you don't really want it in the first place. So it can be any of those, because the truth is whatever you manifest will happen. It may not happen exactly in the form you expect, but it will happen. These are divine laws, and they basically work in the same way the law of gravity actually works as well. Yeah, we don't want it in the first place. I can remember setting a manifestation which didn't happen around about my law firm. And after a while, I actually tuned in for, I actually don't want that. I don't actually desire to be running a law firm anymore. So I realized it was completely not congruent with myself anyway. And I was noticing that what I put as a manifestation was happening in other things in my life, just not in my law firm. So just understand that. Just know that the day, as soon as you make this manifestation today, it's already put in place. So now what we're going to do is take you back to a Tribeca code. And just get you to breathe in through your nose for 4. And hold for 4. And breathe out for 8 through your mouth. And really have your manifestation in mind. You can even go and put the manifestation directly into the circle in the center. So breathe in for 4, and hold for 4, and breathe out for 8. So just imagine that manifestation code with whatever's in the center, and just have something in the center that can represent it. Like if it's 10K a month, just 10K plus. If it's healing, just an H with a circle around it. It is commanded by the laws of the golden liquid realms of the chemical powers and by the power of Christ that the manifestation of each and every person is said happens now. On all levels, all dimensions, and in all incarnations, and all levels of the auric field, etheric field, now. Aham Brahmasmi, Ta Asia Intadoi, Elijah Tef. Om Kriya Babaji Nama Om. Ta Asia Intadoi. I am this I am. And just see this Tribeca code replicating itself in every one of your chakras. And even just see it expanding out and completely filling your auric field. And just breathe that Tribeca code right through your root chakra down to the center of the earth. And see it there. And then breathe it up, all the way up to 36 inches above your head. And down into your heart. And as you breathe out into your heart chakra. And just see it coming together. And forming one circle. And as you see that forming into one circle, and now as you breathe out, breathe it all the way down to 6 inches below your feet. And you'll feel it's been done. And now just clearing all blockages on any way, shape or form connected to this manifestation now. And clearing all the scarlets and putting them in this pale silver reflector orb and leading them now to places justly earned. Okay, take a glass of water and just before we end, quickly share what you experienced. And as you're doing that, and taking your water to integrate it and sharing your experiences, just a comment, make sure this week you start to practice this. For those of you who are really serious and would like to move to the next level, do one manifestation every day, just one, just for a 7-day challenge till next week. It can be something simple as you'll manifest one new client tomorrow. It can be as simple as that. Total calmness and tears for James. Absolute certainty and clarity, powerful, daily checklist, excellent. Excellent, Jason. So do that as your homework for this week. Michelle, a powerful piece, but it was certain and done. Max feeling shifting. Mitchell feeling very powerful. Excellent, everyone. So here's my homework. Make sure every day you do a manifestation, even if it's something around a client or something you'd like to have for the day, or that you would just basically have a certain sale in your work today, or just like it could just be simple as that you'll experience something around your health or meet a certain person or whatever else. Just start getting into the practice of doing it. Just doing one kind of manifestation. Like, I know one of my clients was doing a manifestation every day around her business, for example. Yep, around business, around finances, around something tangible. It could even be like it could just be feeling more energy or something like that. Just find some reason to do it. I do every day. I'm manifesting something. I can tell you now, every day. It can even be a deeper connection or a specific download for the day or new insight on something. Okay, everyone. Well, thank you. If you do experience anything, when you do start to experience your manifestations, make sure you let me know and email me and keep me informed. And if you ever desire any help with a manifestation, feel free to email or message across to me, like if you've written one out and just like some fine tuning, and more than happy to do that. Okay, thanks everyone.